Welcome to another brand new episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am your host, Matt, aka Stormageddon. And I just want to take a moment to tell you all about my merch page. I haven't plugged it a lot lately. I've been plugging other podcasts and other projects. But if you want a surefire way to support me now that I no longer have a Patreon, you can go to my Twitch page and subscribe, or go to my merch page. You can go to djstormageddon.com. It has a link to everything I do, including a button that says merch. And you can get t-shirts, mugs, stickers, tote bags, all with various versions of the things I do. You can get one with my face on it, which is pretty awesome. You can get stuff from Fun and Games. You can get stuff from my old podcast as well. I believe there's still a vintage Crash Chords sticker still up for sale. But yeah, you can check out all of the awesome stuff that I have there. If you happen to pick up something from the merch store, take a photo, tweet it at me. I would love to see you wearing, holding, or storing things in all the cool merch that I sell. So enough about that, enough about my merch page. This week, my guest is the incredible Joe Ciano. Joe is a comics writer. He is an awesome human. He was connected to me by Meg Griffin, who is another host here over on the Certain Point of View podcast network. And I'm really glad to be chatting with Joe about his brand new comic, Children of the Woods, and many other awesome comic-related nerdery. So without further ado, here's my incredible conversation with the brilliant, charming, and wonderful Joe Ciano. It's so funny to me that you know Steve and that you know Devin, and like those are so far flung in my past of podcasting because I've been doing it for almost a decade now. It's just, of course you know someone, and of course you know the incredible Meg Griffin who connected us. It's just you know all
Meg's
the cool
great,
people
yeah.
from New York. Yeah,
New Paltz, man. Although Meg was through my friend Ryan, who went to New Paltz, who was Devin and Steven's suite mate, which is the funniest. So like
that's so funny.
Yeah,
it's
like
so wild.
The no degrees of separation is just great.
I'm talking, of course, with the incredible Joe Ciano. You, as I said, was connected to me through Meg. Turns out to know tons of folks from my past. And I'm really excited to have you on the show. I want to start by talking about Children of the Woods, which is your big book coming out in January. So I guess first, why don't you tell folks a little bit about that book and how this thing came to be?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. So Children of the Woods is a very classic style horror book. It's about a boy named Quinn who finds a lost book of magic in the woods and wants to use it to take revenge on his high school tormentor. But he winds up dragging him and his crush, Amber, down this rabbit hole of secrets of dark magic that is the Black Woods. And both kind of find their way basically being interwoven into like the legends of the town, where Amber is beginning to, learn more about the town and the culture within it and how it's not quite what it seems. And Quinn basically learns that he is now part of the Black Woods, but he's not the only one there, and not everyone who is there is welcoming of him.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the synopsis. You have a little sneak peek on your website as well of like the opening pages, and I think
those are the original demos that we did way back in like 2000. Yeah, those are probably circa 2015.
Wow, that's awesome. But like this is cool because like, of course there's a lot of superhero comics and like, Marvel and DC are doing giant things in all sorts of places now. But I love independent comics and how they're doing different kinds of stories. And so this says that the story is by you. Does that mean that you wrote the narrative? Do you do the dialogue? What does writing a comic book like this actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So writing means that I come up with like the scripts. I come up with like the dialogue, the plot, the story, the paneling to a certain extent. I work with Josh Hickson, who's a very accomplished artist. He did Shanghai Red for Image, the plot for Vault. He's got 2 books for DC. He's doing a Batman Fortnite one-shot. And
Nice.
DC, I think it's Batman Secret Files Peacekeeper for their first date event coming up. But he always has the freedom to do what he thinks is artistically going to look best. But we have like a good back and forth on like, what we think will work for scenes and stuff like that. But, the dialogue, the story direction, most of that is me.
And so, where does the inspiration for this comic come from? I mean, obviously, you must be a fan of horror in multiple genres, but what was the inspiration for Children of the Woods?
I love small town horror.
Yeah.
There's something just super unnerving to me about, the digger, like the deeper you dig into like a culture and a history, the uglier it can be. So I was very much inspired by, just that kind of theming. Earlier drafts of it kind of looked a little bit like Twin Peaks.
Nice.
So that was very much an influence at the time. But I think I really found my stride when I started reading the classic Adventure into Fear comics that Marvel used to put out.
Yeah.
Which, once again, had that small town vibe, that there's something lurking beyond the town that the people don't quite understand. Just that vibe just, really kind of like hit with me. And then I was like, okay, no, that's what this should be like that. This is what I'm trying to do.
It's funny you bring up those Marvel books because like they did a terrible, when they were still licensing out their stuff, they did a terrible Man-Thing straight to video like movie. And
I was so excited for that as a middle schooler. I think I had to be.
And I remember how bad it was and just being kind of bummed they tried a horror thing and it just didn't work. But like, those comics they terrified me as a child. Like I was so easily spooked and those comics were so scary.
Because they're so unnerving, horror works more for me in comics than it does like most mediums. Cause like you get to linger on the page. The words that, they're saying to you, just, they can stay with you. One of my favorite things with the comic genre is that you can literally take it at your own pace. If you're watching a movie, it's, you're there and then, immediately you're on to the next scene and the next line. Comics, you get to kind of stay in the moment for as long as you want. Especially when, you're doing horror with the medium, you can really have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I like that. Some of my favorite comics have had this air of dread or unnerving, making you unnerved. And you're right, you're in complete control, and yet it doesn't make it less scary. Like you can decide to turn the page or not turn the page, but it doesn't. You don't feel like you have any more control.
You could even go back to what creeped you out on the page before if you want to. You can go in reverse and freak yourself out again. Yeah.
So you said those early drawings that are up on your website are from 2015. How long have you been working on this book with Josh?
2015. Since fall 2015. We had originally met in Escape Pod Comics in Huntington Village, which you've never been, is I think one of the premier comic shops of Long Island. Just a vast array of graphic novels, single issues, whatever you want. If you're a comic reader, I think it's a shop for you. But Josh was beginning work on Shanghai Red, which would eventually come out from Image, I want to say in early 2018. But it's a little slower going, that process. And I was looking for someone I could do a short horror story with. So we did the business card exchange. He had a self-published book there like I did. I picked it up, and he just immediately felt like a great fit. So I emailed him a week later, and then I think a week after that, we're sitting in Starbucks sketching out our monster design, and we just kind of went off running from there.
I love that. And so the whole process took about, we'll say, I wanted to say 5 years because I still think it's 2020, but it's not. It's going to be 7 years because it's coming out in 2022. But what is that process like? I imagine the whole beginning is coming up with the story and the early sketches. But what do you think was the longest part of the process? Was it just kind of compiling and finalizing? Like where did the lengthy, or was it all just kind of evenly spread out over the 5 to 7 years?
I'm going to say the hardest part. I mean, the lengthy process was probably finding a publisher for this, because that kind of backtracked us a little bit. So we actually, at the time we got picked up by Dark Horse, had basically completed 5 of the 6 chapters, plan issues, now, chapters of our original graphic novel. But we had self-published 3 under our original title, The Black Woods. And we decided to hold off because we were looking to get a publisher, and we came close one time, and unfortunately the deal fell through. So, I have to start the process all over again. But we had been kind of sitting on this for a while to an extent. Also, Josh's own indie work that he had kind of put off finishing this because, these took on. He had Shanghai, and before Shanghai, and this is just how Gribble is, he's just like, he hits me up and he's just like, all right, Joe, Shanghai's picking up, so I'm just going to crank out as many pages as I possibly can before, he has to work on that. And I think he cranked out like an issue and a half in about a month, which is insane.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, towards the end of 2020, we picked up production again. Just because we had held off in case the original publisher we're talking to wanted to change the ending at all. And just for his schedule to really kind of open up and for him to have the time to do everything the right way.
I mean, I have to imagine that it's a stressful process trying to find a publisher, right? Like you want to make sure that it's the right fit, but you also want someone to publish it. The old saying, beggars can't be choosers kind of a thing. Like you want to work with someone, right, and get this out and get it onto as many shelves as possible. I have to imagine the whole process was probably one of the more draining parts of making a comic.
That was definitely the hardest part, as weird as it's going to sound. The way the comics works now, just from what I've seen, other people's experience may vary, but they're really looking, I feel like, for more of a completed product. Like the more you can have done, I feel like the better your odds are of getting picked up. We really didn't make any headway until I think we had like 3 issues done, and that really gave editors who were looking at us like a great feel for what our story was, what our direction was, and I think that helped us tremendously. But it's hard to, you have to put yourself in a position as well to find opportunities. We had our best success at New York Comic Con, and that's, any publisher under the sun is going to be there, but that's not an opportunity that's necessarily available to anyone. We got fortunate living in the New York area.
For sure. I'm curious. So obviously the book's coming out in January. We'll provide links in the show notes to how you can pre-order it and get a copy for yourself.
Pre-order available now.
You have to be thinking a little bit about I feel like most people can't help it anymore. When you create something for one medium, you must be thinking about other mediums, right? You have to daydream about TV or movies or podcasts. Like, do you have that kind of vision for something like this, a story like this? Of course everyone would love to see that work adapted, but have you ever like toyed with that idea as this comes out as a complete thing?
Because like my mom, when we first doing the first 3 issues, said, I'm showing the family, and she's like, "Oh, wouldn't this make a great TV show?" And I'm like, "Shut up, Mom." My first love is comics first and foremost. Yeah. Like as much as I thoroughly enjoy the Marvel movies, like they don't really touch the high and the joy that I get from reading the comic stories. So this is always a comic kind of first and foremost. And if we run into that success, otherwise, if people are interested in the media rights for this, email me just kidding. If people are interested, I'm more than welcome to adapting this to either, like TV, film, interpretive dance play, like whatever you want to do with it. But like first and foremost to me, this is a comic book. This is a graphic novel, and it's been just great to see it become that and become a completed story.
Sure. And I feel like that has to be important, right? As a comics writer and as someone who loves comics, it's very easy for these days for things to get adapted, to video games, to TV, to movies, to whatever else. And like, it is just as important for this medium to stay this medium, right? Like you lose things famously in the translation often because they're different mediums. And I think part of Marvel's success is they understood that and they started making movies that could be their own thing, but still pay homage to the things that you love. And I think when you're getting comics, you're always going to get a more detailed story, more downtime, more information, the kind of things you just can't put in a movie. You can maybe put in a TV show because you need that time with those characters. I have to imagine that kind of storytelling is what drew you to comics.
No, it is. I mean, comics have always just felt so classic Americana to me. Like, I really feel like I'm part of the last generation that could go to, like, your 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee and an X-Men comic, and just kind of, like, veg down. So like I have such a, just like a great love for comics for that reason. But no, like the medium, the art, the colorfulness of it just everything about it just really kind of drew me in. Even just like like the page layouts. There are a few pages I own like original art of, and I just love it. Like it's just such a great fun visual medium that I think it's just so rich for not just like superheroes, but like really any kind of story. Like you can really tell a comic story like in any format. This One Summer by Mirko Tamaki is very much like a coming of age story. And you can have that in comics. You can have your vampires and your werewolves, but you can also have like not that those can't be heartfelt, but you can have like other like heartfelt type stories too. Like it really is a medium for any kind of story.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had a return to comic books. I grew up, of course, reading comic books. I had omnibuses of Green Lantern and Superman and Batman.
Who's your fave, if you don't mind?
Oh, I mean, it's tough. I think Wolverine wins out just because I was a boy in the 90s, and I think as a boy in the 90s, you're pre-programmed to like Wolverine. And
how could you not like Wolverine? I mean, like...
And now as an adult queer male, I'm also attracted to Wolverine, so it gets more complicated, But, like, I think for me, like, the thing that brought me back to comics was the indie stories and the stories that weren't superheroes. I love superhero comics, I do. But like stuff like Chew really brought me back into stuff. And of course, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like I love that movie so much, and I couldn't wait to read that run of comics. And I devoured the 6 books, I don't know, in a day or two. And like I don't read that way. I'm a slow reader, and so it takes me a while to get through stuff. But I devoured that stuff, and I think like as much as I love Scott Pilgrim is a movie, and I think it was very well done, and I love Edgar Wright. I think there's something about it as a comic where you can tell, like, Scott is a jerk in both stories, right? But in the comic, his redemption feels more earned because he goes through it. Whereas in the movie, like, they got to hit that 2-hour runtime or whatever it is, and it's just it's a different kind of storytelling.
It is. There's no rock bottom for Scott Pilgrim in the movie, where there's very much a rock bottom for Scott Pilgrim in the graphic novel.
Yeah, and I think that kind of storytelling is really key to comic books, and I think it's why when I can sit down and read a comic, I really get sucked in. I remember the last like superhero comic I read was the Alan Moore run of Swamp Thing, the graphic novel like book they put together years and years ago, and like I loved the Swamp Thing cartoon as a kid. I loved the toys. I loved the stupid movie. But like
the great theme song that the cartoon had.
Such a good theme song. But like I remember reading this comic and I'm like it's just night and day. And of course, yes, one was marketed for toys and kids, and like the other one is very much an adult story. But like I like that diversity of comic book characters, even in different mediums and even in the same medium. I mean, Swamp Thing's been told in different ways by different people, and like Swamp Thing's made a return recently in some of the DC cartoons. Like I like that versatility in comic books.
No, I love that too. Just like the exploration of like a character and what they can represent in like in all these different forms. One of my favorite characters is the Question, and he's had so many iterations over like just even like the past 20 years when I really think about it. But it's great to see that though, because like there's always something new and different to explore. And like you just don't see that like in any other medium. Like, like just for like there's no different exploration of like the Friends characters, like there's no like kid-friendly version of 24. There's like but comics you do. You can have a very mature Wolverine. You can have Wolverine in your children's cartoon. You have the movie Logan, which was incredible.
Yeah. A good farewell to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who
and the Fox Marvel movies as well. So
yeah, they totally didn't make any other movies after Logan.
I don't count them. Was Deadpool 2 after Logan?
Yes, because he comments about Logan.
Okay, I'll end it there. Deadpool 2.
End it there.
Nothing.
Okay,
end it there. That's it. It's over. There are no more.
It's over. But yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like I loved Hawkeye as a kid because it was just such a cheesy character in the original Avengers comic books, and then Matt Fraction comes along and writes the Hawkeye saga essentially, and like it makes this character who like I felt like a loser liking because, oh, you like the guy with the bow and arrow. And like they kind of played that up in the comics. Like he is kind of a loser and he's kind of lost his way. And like I love when comics explore that kind of stuff. And even like now in the video games for superhero stuff and anything based on comics, or even stuff like the Netflix series for like Sweet Tooth and things, they're starting to explore the media in a more meaty way and translate them more interestingly. But it wasn't always that way. Like I was spoiled with the X-Men cartoon. But,
we were all spoiled with the X-Men cartoon.
You know, and the Batman, like a Batman
and the
Superman
Batman
and Justice
too.
League.
Spider-Man was also excellent.
Was also great. Like all of those cartoons in the 90s, I think were really great. And like cartoons that came later were good too, like Wolverine and the X-Men or X-Men Evolution. But like
Teen Titans, yeah.
Teen Titans, exactly. And like I remember getting mad at first when Teen Titans Go came out. I was like, this is dumb. Where's the real adventure? But I think I was just spoiled for what Teen Titans meant to me as a cartoon. But the reality is Teen Titans Go to the movies, which I've only seen bits and pieces of. I haven't watched all of it yet. It's really brilliant. And it's showing...
so funny and clever.
Yeah, it's showing the versus of these characters that lived in one place. And turns out they can live in a lot of places.
Yeah, Teen Titans and versus Teen Titans Go is such like a interesting thing because I love the original Teen Titans cartoon. Yeah. I think you'll be hard pressed to find a more ambitious ending to a cartoon than Teen Titans with Beast Boy finding. Can we do spoilers?
Yeah, absolutely. This show's been around long enough.
Yeah, it's fine.
If you don't want spoilers for Teen Titans, skip ahead a few minutes.
Teen Titans is interesting where they do what you think would be the show finale, where they team up with all the heroes and they beat all the villains, and you feel really great. And then the last episode is Tara, who was, I think, a rock statue, is back to life. And Beast Boy is doing his best to help her remember and bring her back. But the more it goes on, the more it's apparent that there is no going back to what they were. And he has to go forward. And it's a great metaphor for the fans of the show needing to also move on and go forward in their own lives. But it's such a downer note to what was like for the most part, like a very happy show. And that's just one of those moments that kind of like just stuck with me, of like Beast Boy being like, I'm on my way, like somberly, and then like running to go help the group.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of those comic cartoon shows really did some interesting stuff and weren't afraid to be for adults. I think it was the earliest moments of adults. I mean, think about how the X-Men cartoon opened with the death of Morph. Admittedly, a character that they made up, and then they brought back seasons and seasons later as a villain, like, you know, or even the Grey Ghost. Like, I always think about the Grey Ghost episode of Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. Like, especially now that we've lost Adam West, it's like, what a good episode and what a smart way to bring Adam West into, and they've paid homage to the Grey Ghost in the Arkham games and all sorts of other stuff. Like, I think comics are such a wealth of material to mine from, and it's hard not to let your mind wander. And it's like there's enough to get you going, but still enough to leave to the imagination. Did you have a favorite book growing up, or like a first comic that really got you into stuff?
First comic that really got me into. I mean, I've always been into comics.
Yeah.
And I hope I get the artist. I almost want to look it up, but I don't want to take time on the podcast. But there was an artist who they were books, like, you know, like picture books, but they were in comic book form, and they were about this grandpa telling his kids stories of when him and their, I guess, great uncle like had their childhood adventures, and the grandpa would just be drawn as like the grandpa is like a little kid, and they loved strawberry ice cream, and that was like one of the first times where I'm just like, oh no, comics books aren't just like superheroes. They're so many like other different things. But as like a reader, like I'm gonna say I started in the early 2000s with the Devil's Due G.I. Joe.
Oh, wow.
And the Chuck Austin X-Men run, which is infamous for many different reasons. But I grew up enjoying the character Juggernaut. And that is the run where Juggernaut joins the X-Men and goes through, I think, his biggest period of character growth in his entire character history. And that was like a fun thing to see. This guy kind of realize, like, I've been a piece of crap my whole life. I want to try and be better.
Yeah. I love what they've done with Juggernaut over the years. I think he's such an interesting character, this invincible character. Like, I think that, like, what Marvel has done with some of their villains is always so fascinating. Like, I always felt like DC's villains were the classic mustache twirling, like, I'm just a bad guy. And they've grown out of that. I feel like it's more diverse now. But I always felt like Marvel always had more complicated villains. And, like, the movies have emulated that, having, especially more recently with Shang-Chi and Black Panther, like, having more complicated villains. And I love those kinds of stories. Do you have a favorite? You said the question was your favorite hero. Do you have a favorite villain from comic books?
So, like, favorite hero is actually probably Juggernaut.
Okay.
And I feel confident saying that he's a hero now. Favorite villain. I'm going to say it because even though he's on Justice League right now, I don't think he's been a hero, like, all that long. Black Adam.
Oh, sure,
from
yeah.
DC. Who's very much and they've messed around with his origin like 2 different times, but he's essentially the original champion of Shazam brought into the modern day, and bringing like kind of like a very much an old school justice like view where he serves with like the JSA for a while and tries to prove that he's the hero that he once was, but really kind of sees the corruption of the modern world and the hero's refusal to be proactive. So he goes back and he takes his original homeland because it's being ruled by a dictator and the UN won't do anything. No one's doing anything. And he just goes, he makes his own army as he would have in the old days and just takes it over.
Oh, wow.
That's
fascinating.
He'll be played by The Rock in the upcoming movie. So
I'm
if you're
curious
interested.
to see how they do that. Like, I love Shazam. I have a soft spot for Zach Levi, but like I thought Shazam was
he was brilliant in that
fun.
role.
Yeah, he was very well cast.
Everything about that movie was like well cast. Just young Freddie Freeman just growing up to be Adam Brody is just perfect casting.
Expertly done. But like,
it was.
Also I love Mark Strong as a villain in anything. He was the only good thing about the Green Lantern movie is Sinestro.
Yeah, so he was man. Yeah, he did Sinestro. Sinestro was up there when I was thinking of like best villains.
He's good. Yeah, my favorite villain will always be the Joker. I think that he's one of the most complex characters in comic books. And like, I mean, you can't talk about the Joker without talking about Mark Hamill. Like his run as the Joker in Batman and Superman and Justice League, like is some of
the Arkham video games.
The Arkham video games.
But
like,
as we were talking just before this, you have so many different iterations of this character and so many different age mediums that it's just like what a richness that comics has to offer.
Right. And like I've gotten to tell Tim Daly, because I met him once, that he is the voice I hear when I read Superman, because he's the voice of Superman from the Superman cartoons. And like when I read a comic book, if there's Superman, I hear his version because that's just the version I grew up with. And like I love that we can kind of apply that stuff to comic books.
I apply it very weirdly where if I'm reading like 90s X-Men, I hear it in the 90s Charles Xavier voice, where if I'm reading anything post that, I read it as Patrick Stewart, and it's very weird.
That is very weird. I love that. Oh man, you bring up the 90s Xavier, and I just remember the compilation they put together on YouTube of him yelling or screaming, because like he was always like being like it was my like it's
Did they ever do a super cut of Scott and Jean yelling each other's names?
Probably.
That should exist.
They must. Right now, I'm that picture of Wolverine holding a picture frame because I'm excited for the Wolverine game they just announced today.
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah, Insomniac today.
Hold up real quick.
As of when we're recording this, because when it airs, it'll have been a few weeks old. On the PlayStation showcase today, they announced Insomniac is working on Spider-Man 2, of course, but they are also working on a Wolverine game.
Oh, and God, they're going to make me get a PS5.
Yeah, they are, because they are both for PS5. And I'm like, I love Wolverine unabashedly. And so now my only question is Steve Blum going to continue the legacy of being the voice of Wolverine? Or will they bring in someone new like they did with Yuri Lowenthal for Spider-Man? So I'm curious. But I think I I miss reading comics the way I used to. I used to have a box at my local shop like most people. I feel like single issues, do you still keep up with single issues? I feel like it's so much harder now. I mean, I guess if you do digital, it probably isn't, but like I just feel like there's so much to read.
You gotta pick your. I still do. I am a dinosaur. I love the single issue. I love having every Juggernaut appearance from 1965 to the present day.
Wow, that's impressive.
So like, I'm very romantic about it, but like, yes, it is 100% can be overwhelming, especially when they do events and tie-ins and things like that. I think if you pick a few, if there are books you're really interested in and you just get that book, I think readers will be okay. But like at a certain point, curiosity is going to get the better of you, and you're going to start expanding into different titles and like, oh well, Wolverine is going to be in this crossover. I should read this crossover, and then you're just going to get exposed. I think that's how they try and get you. I don't know if it works, but. No, it can be overwhelming. It can be a lot, but like I love having the book in my hand and like going page at a time. I also do comicsology. I've really come to love like the guided view of like hopping from panel to panel to panel. I think that's very neat. That's actually I read the majority of Superior Spider-Man.
Nice.
Which is an excellent comic run if our listeners have never read it, but. I don't think it's overwhelming as people think. I just think you gotta pick and choose your spots. Because really, if you're just getting that's the thing. If you're just getting one book, that's $4 a month. That's less than a beer on a night out. So, I think it can be worth it. But like I said, if you have an addictive personality, probably just wait for the trade. But
yeah, I feel like every other medium right now, there's just so much of everything, right? TV, movies, video games, books, comic books. I think you have to, it's picking and choosing your battles makes a lot of sense. And I think I just need to find the right books that will inspire me to do that. I think for me as a comic reader, when I find something I really love, I devour it. I mean, I remember when the Civil War, the first book of Civil War first came out, like I read that in a few hours. Like I just burned through it. Because it was something I was really into. And then I was going to start buying the more issues. And then when they started Civil War 2, I was like, oh, maybe I'll pick that up. Of course, then I read the reviews and I was like, oh, maybe I won't read Civil War 2. I don't know. But I think that there is a power to, like, I think that digital media has its place. I'm not going to be Mr. Old Man, but like, there's something about holding the physical thing in your hands. And like, we live in a world where, DRM and whatever else, they can, in theory, take all that digital stuff back. And so there's something to say about having at least maybe some of your favorites in physical form.
Yeah. If I'm paying top dollar for something, I want to own it, Yeah. Most of the stuff I get on Comixology, I have a few books that I buy or was buying exclusively digital. But most of the time, I'm like, I'm getting whatever sales they have. I'm getting the lower trade price point. I don't mind that because, like, it's digital. I physically don't own it. It's a little bit cheaper. It's nice.
Yeah.
But it's never going to be the book. And that's not to discount things like Webtoons, which does a great job. If you ever want to just like read comics, Webtoons is a beautiful site that offers a wide variety of story genres, many of which are not really being covered in mainstream comics. I love romance as a genre. Which is funny because I wrote a horror book, but like romance is a huge genre on Webtoons and stuff like that. And it's nice to have an outlet for that type of story in this medium.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, that's why I love indie games and indie comics, and indie music is like, you're going to get a little more of what you can't get elsewhere, right? You're going to get different kinds of stories. You're going to get more diverse stories because there's less rules, restrictions, or big corporations eyeballing to make sure, it's less about capitalism and more about storytelling, I guess.
It's also, it's less of a gate to have to kind of jump into, like you can, if you want to make a comic, you can make a comic. You can hire someone, have them do the arts and put it up on your website, put it up, wherever you'd like. it becomes a little bit harder to make money doing comics that way. But you can do it. Like the entry point to get into comics is lower now than it's ever been. And I think it's great. I love seeing new diverse voices. I love seeing new diverse genres. There's just like, it really is, in my personal, it really is kind of like a golden age for comics right now if you're a reader and you just want to read the medium and explore the medium and see it for how beautiful it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can kind of Google and find anything, and I think niches are so much easier to explore in a way that they weren't even 10 years ago, just because you can literally type in comic about queer, lovers going to space, and something will probably come up, like it's just
like 40 things will probably come up.
Probably.
But that's the beauty of it, though.
Yeah.
It's everything, whatever story you're kind of looking for, it's definitely out there, either through traditional style comics or web comics. It's there for you. It's such a great medium, and I think the medium deserves to be explored. And that's why I'm kind of a little bit big into digital. As much as I always like the book, I like stories. I like getting stories. I like telling stories. There are stories I want to do that I don't think would work for a traditional publisher, because like the market for that story doesn't exist in the current comics market. Like if I want to do a romance story, I'd be better off doing it as like a webtoon or as a Kickstarter, because that's not a genre, except for maybe, like a book like Sunstone. That's not like a genre that you see in mainstream, or quote unquote mainstream comics.
Right.
But you see it online, and they're very popular online, and that's where the market for that story is.
Going back to Children of the Woods for a second. So we have several comic book shows on the podcast network, and often one of our hosts, JD Martin, will put together playlists either inspired by comic books or stuff he's listened to while reading comic books. Does music influence Children of the Woods or your writing in general? Do you listen to music while you're writing? Do you listen to music while reading?
I listen to not while reading. I think I used to, and then I found I just wasn't paying attention as much. I want the one-on-one Joe and comics experience. But no, definitely when I'm writing though. Children of the Woods, I'm trying to. Children of the Woods, I have like a very creepy. I just have a playlist that's just like eerie, creepy music. Mm-hmm. Usually piano based. And that kind of like influenced a lot of like Children of the Woods, to be honest with you.
Interesting. And so you find when you're writing anything, you listen to music, it helps you kind of like create the story?
It sets the tone.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I'd say it helps create, but it gets you in that mindset of like, all right, this is the setting, this is the feeling. Like, let's, go from there. And it helps keeps the focus a little bit. Like, I don't know if I could have write Children of the Woods listening to J-pop or or country.
That's fair. Although I'm sure it would make it very trippy on either.
Country Western horror is definitely a genre that should be explored.
If you could write any comic for any hero or ongoing story, or not even a hero, is there like a pie in the sky, like, I want to write for this character, I love this character so much I'd love to write for them?
Oh, God, I would love to write the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
Just have him do big beefy boy stuff and also explore what it means to be like a better person, and overcoming your your past flaws.
I love that.
And that's right. He's a great story of redemption. And being a better man than who you were yesterday. I think for a long time his power defined his character, and now I think his character really kind of defines his power.
Yeah. I did love his appearance in Deadpool 2, mostly because it's just, I mean, again, spoiler for a movie that's been out for a little while, but it was such a well-kept secret, so that when he actually appeared, I was just like, oh my God, I'm seeing one of the greatest 90s assholes, because he was in the 90s, on the big screen, I also love that in the credits he plays himself. Like, I
don't think they even realized how well they nailed his character.
Amazing.
So I had heard murmurs that like he could be in it, but I absolutely just expected like Deadpool just kick him in the balls And like that's it. That's his cameo. Deadpool kicked him in the balls. Haha. Moving on. I did not expect him to like be like a focal point of like that movie, but like they just got him so well from like the character design to like his actual character. So I don't know how much you know about the art. Kane is basically he comes from a very abusive like house. His stepdad would beat him and also beat Charles when they were younger. So him befriending this kid who wants to take like revenge on like this awful man who abuses children, runs an orphan house, is like weirdly something he would absolutely be like, yeah, let's go smash him. Like,
I love that. I love that. I mean, and it's clear that Ryan Reynolds is a fan of comic books. Like he's mentioned that many times, and he's done a great job for the most part with the Deadpool movies. I still. What
I say? What's rubbing you the wrong way here?
Vanessa's fridging. I just like she's such a good character, and of course I love that actress, and so like just to kill her off. And yes, of course, technically at the end of the movie he brings her back, but like it just was like that was the one thing. I loved the rest of the movie.
It's weird because like you want to tell a story about grief, and you know you should have the freedom to tell your story, but like. That was a weird thing to do. Like there are other ways I think they could have potentially explored that didn't have to have that. But like, yeah, I'd agree. That's the one thing that probably is that, and just his like 4-minute I'm dying scene at the end of Deadpool 2.
Yeah, that's one of those. It's supposed to be funny and then annoying and then come back around again, but it didn't come back around.
It didn't come back around. I was just like, I'm like, please move on. I'm like.
Well, I mean, this has been a lovely chat. I want to give you a chance to promote your stuff and where folks can find you, but I wanted to talk a few more things about Children of the Woods. So
yes, please
talk about how obviously you're working, you know, you're collaborating with someone to make this happen. How does the artwork come to you? Is it like panel by panel? Is it page by page? How do you like? Was there ever a time where you didn't like the vision and you wanted to shift stuff? Like, talk a little bit about that kind of process, translating the words into images.
So we worked with, besides just Josh, we also worked with Roman Stevens, who does the colors, and Hassan, who does the letters, both of whom are phenomenal talents in this industry. But as far as just like, you know, like, the process with Josh, I'd get back. Usually, he'd give me like the pencils for a page. I'd take a look at them. Usually, change nothing. There are a few times when I'm just like, no, because like you know he's the artist, and you know if you're making a book like, especially a book like this where we're doing a full length graphic novel, you want to trust the person you're working with, and I had complete faith in Josh. There was just maybe I don't think I have one or two moments where I'm like, no, like I need this thing in there. Everything else was like just like perfect, like lights out. But I usually we'd get like a page at a time. Josh and I would probably talk about the page, go over like any potential changes he made, why they were made, and then we just kind of move on. But usually the way it works, Josh would get the full script from me. I'd get the pages, usually one to like 1 to 4 at a time. We'd go over them. If there are any like edits we need to make, we'd make them. Usually before the inking stage, then he would ink them. Roman would do the colors. He worked more with Josh on that process. I had a little bit of a say, but most of it, I wanted Josh to. It is his art. He has the best vibe for what is going to work best with his art. And as far as lettering goes, we got like a couple of demos from Hassan of like bubble tails, what kind of font we wanted to use. And the entire ensemble just makes the book so much better than when Josh and I were originally doing the demo issues. Because it just everything just pops more. Like, the words are more vibrant. The backgrounds are just more a part of the scene. It's such a complete book that when I was getting these pages back, from when, the art that we had done in 2015, now seeing it, fully colored and re-lettered, it was like seeing it again for the first time. It was like falling in love all over again. And it was just like such an amazing, like incredible feeling.
I love that. It's very easy to forget about how collaborative comic books are, right? Because there have been people who have written and drawn comics, but it's pretty rare. It's usually
a team. Comics is a team sport.
It's a team sport, and like I have a friend who's been doing coloring and lettering for ages, and like
lettering is so important. Not to go off. Lettering can make or break a scene.
I agree, and I think it's often they're the unsung heroes of comic book. Typically, they talk about the artist and the writer, and I feel like the colorist and the letterer is.
I go back between letterer and letterist, and I'm never quite sure what the industry. Letterist sounds cool. I don't know if it's correct, but
like they make or break a comic. I agree. Like I can't remember what comic it was now, but there was some comic I bought years ago where like the lettering was just so odd and small, and like my old man eyes couldn't read it, and so I didn't read it. I didn't have zoom on the physical page. But like, art design is more than just, and storytelling is more than just the words or the visuals. And I love that comic books share that in a way that other mediums, of course you can break it down, cinematographer and color correction and all that stuff. But like,
even though that's still an ensemble team.
Yeah. I just think there's something about the interesting ensemble of the 4-person team, typically, if not more, for comics and how that is. Did you have any say on the lettering, or is it just you kind of let Hassan go?
So we had like a very like fun demo process where we gave him the first couple of pages and he sent over different speech boxes, different caption fonts, different, caption sizes. And it was a very fun kind of like pick and choose. Okay, we think this would work best. We think like this tail. And this is just me being the old school comics person, I wanted the pointed tail.
Yeah.
Like the new thing in comics is like like the sort of like rounded tail at the end leading to the person. I'm like, no, I gotta have the point. I need the point to the person tail. But like we had a very fun, like, almost like audition process for like which like fonts and patterns we'd use. And it's really neat, especially later on in the book, because like the fonts become very important to, they become very character specific as the story gets on deeper. And there's a way that like they mix at times that really kind of just like signifies who's who, who's what, and what are their relationships to each entity. And it's really neat because it makes it just all feel so personalized.
Sure. That
like certain books I think just like kind of like don't have. I mean, to be fair, some don't need, like, right. There's nothing wrong with a good uniform font, but I feel like just the way Hassan did it just made everything just feel so much more personal to each character.
I love that. That's the kind of stuff you don't really hear about, unless you go out looking for comic related interviews. But like, at least for me, as someone who casually reads comics, that kind of information is not common knowledge. And so I love hearing about that kind of stuff. I feel like it just makes that experience feel more personal.
It is. I mean, so, the Children of the Woods is a very personal type horror book where, there are more supernatural elements to it, but a lot of the things that are driving these characters are very inner demon, very personal things that many people can relate to, whether it's being, picked on in school, questioning your social status and like your relationship to your friends, parenting. It is Children of the Woods for a reason. Parenting is like a big theme of the book, but these are all things that can make or break you mentally. And it was very important, especially when I, was doing the conclusion of this book, that everything feel very personal. Like the stakes, you can do larger stakes, but at the core of the book, it's about these characters and what they've gone through, and it should feel personal to both them and to the reader.
I love that. Are there any like parts of stories that are pulled from real life? Any personal moments that are in the book?
None, actually.
So. Okay. I mean, sometimes stories aren't that personal in that way, right?
I mean, they're personal. I mean, there are certain fears in there that are definitely, fears of mine. But like, as far as like, personal experiences, no, there's nothing in there. And when you read this book, you'll be like, oh, thank God there's nothing in there. That.
Oh God, what happened to Joe? I just
Oh my
read this
God,
thing.
is Joe okay? Is Joe...
Well, Joe, this was delightful. Thank you for taking the time to chat. Before I have you help me wrap up the show and answer a question I've been asking all our guests, I would love for you to tell folks where they can find the book to pre-order it and where they can find you online.
Oh, absolutely. So the book is available for pre-order. Basically at any place where you can get books: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Penguin Random House, which will be our distributor through the book market. Oblong Books, which is a phenomenal bookstore in Rhinebeck that what my friend Nicole runs. You can pre-order through your local comic book shop now. Our Diamond pre-order number is now official. So basically, like really anywhere. Like if you can order a book from somewhere, you can order us, be it online or in person.
Amazing. And where can folks find you online if you wish to be found?
I would love to be found if you guys would like to find me. My social media is all very uniform. Twitter, Instagram, at AmazingJCiano. Website, AmazingJCiano.com. Feel free to find me there. Hit me up if you want. I'll try and write back.
Amazing. Go find Joe. Joe's stuff is great. And on his Twitter right now is a great commissioned artwork of a buff boy Juggernaut in short shorts, and it's delightful.
Those are that was so fun fact about that. So Patrick works with me on another book, and I did that commission through him. And he originally sent me back the short shorts on him, which is his original design from like X-Men 12 and 13. That he was only used for that one time. That is the only time he ever had the short shorts. And I'm like, I love that you did this, but like how? Like what reference did you use?
I love that.
Because those have been erased in every other reprint of that story. They always just give him the long pants. So like, I'm like, where did you find the short version of this?
Let Juggernaut have thick thighs. Thighs out. Let's go.
Big beefy boys.
Big beefy boys. But something I've been asking a lot of my guests, and I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, is, we are still living through a pandemic. It's not over, folks. Still wear masks, get vaccinated. But, it's been hard
please.
Yeah, it's been hard for everyone in a myriad of different ways, not just from the pandemic itself, but things going on socially, politically. And so I'm always trying to look on the bright side as we still continue to live in a pandemic state. What is something over the last year or more, as it is now, that's really good that happened during the pandemic? Is there something really good that came of that time that helped you get through, whether it was just something you enjoyed or something that happened or something you did?
Oh, man. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of very nice things happen to me on a either a personal or a like life level, or even just like on like a small like oh, this is like a beloved childhood thing. So I could name a few. I mean, like Boba Fett coming back in The Mandalorian is such a heartwarming, like childhood me always wanted moment that I wanted. But so Chills of the Woods actually got signed during 2020.
Oh, wow.
And that was really like the combination of everything I had been working towards, like for that moment to have that contract come in from Dark Horse, which is, our phenomenal publisher and have been really great to work with. But to get the book out and get the book out on that level, which is such a rewarding and just like really like dream come true moment for me on a personal and emotional level. So this is just a little side tangent because it's part of the story. I got the contract, basically we got the contract mailed to us when everything was finalized, and I was playing the I think it's the new Avengers theme from Avengers Age of Ultron, where it has that moment where Tony and Steve and Thor are all talking to each other, and then it crescendos to the Avengers theme, and it kicks in.
Yeah.
And literally, as I am opening this envelope, I have the crescendo to that moment, and everything just peaked where I'm opening it up, and the Avengers theme kicks in. And it's just the perfect soundtrack to that like perfect moment in your life. And that's such a rare thing that I don't know if it ever really happens outside of movies.
Right.
That will probably stay with me forever.
That's something that when they make your biopic many years down the road, they will include that moment.
They will pay the tens of thousands of dollars to get that.
To play that song.
Get the music license for that moment.
Well, Joe, again, this has been great. Thank you for joining me. Before we go, we have a saying on this podcast, and it's born out of my now on indefinite hiatus music podcast that I used to do with your friend and my friend, Steve Nagel. And it's this idea. I'm sure he's listening. Hi, Steve. But it's this idea that as long as you're making stuff, as long as you're doing something that you love, creating something you love, no matter how hard life gets, it's not that bad. And so the saying is music is life and life is good. So if you could say that, we will close out the show.
Absolutely. Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.nat.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Are you tired of watching your beloved characters being tortured by careless authors?
Are you sick of feeling like they could have swapped out all of the painful action and the plot would remain untouched? Subscribe to Books That Burn, the fortnightly book review podcast focusing on fictional depictions of trauma.
We assume that the characters' reactions are reasonable and focus on how badly or well they were served by their authors.
Join us for our minor character spotlights, main character discussions, and favorite non-traumatic things in the dark books we love.
Find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.